So as I have titled this video, this is a question from JEE Advanced 2025 that looks very complex at first glance. Before attempting it, let us put ourselves in the shoes of a candidate who is probably giving this exam. Now, when you open the official JEE Advanced website, this is the very first question that is listed in the JEE 2025 exam, paper 1. So it's like you are a candidate and you are going into the exam, and the very first question you see is this one, and this can be very overwhelming, and this is precisely what they may have intended, just to test how you actively work when under immense pressure. Now let's get to the question. It says that let R denote the set of all real numbers. Now first of all, we have here three equations, two of which are 4-degree polynomial, and this is what can scare people away, and they might think that this is a very lengthy question. It is a bit lengthy, but it is not as lengthy as you would expect it to be. Now let us go to this part. AI comma bi belongs to R for I is equal to 1 2 3. Now this again, this looks scary, but this just means that a1 a2 a3, similarly b1 b2 b3, that is the coefficients of these equations are all real numbers, because you see the coefficient a1 a2 a3 b1 b2 b3. This line simply says that these are all real, and these functions are defined for real numbers. Now what we want is the coefficient of x cube in this equation, and this equation h of x will be in terms of f of x and g of x. Okay, as I said, it just looks overwhelming, but it gets pretty simplified quickly. So let us take f of x plus 1. How you get that is simply replacing f of x plus 1 in this equation. So it becomes a1 plus 10 of x plus 1 plus a2 plus x plus 1 whole square plus a3 x plus 1 whole cube, and so on. Okay, now we do not need this entire equation. We just need the terms of x cube, because we require the coefficient of x cube in h of x, which means coefficient of x cube in f of x minus 1 minus coefficient of x raised to power 4 x cube in x plus g of x plus 2. And we can get both of these equations from here. Let us first work on f of x plus 1. So basically we require just these two terms. Now again, this can look very tough that how to expand this, but as you know, x square plus 2x plus 1 ka whole square, you can do it. And so using this formula, what you finally get from here, it is straightforward. It will be a3, right? But for this, because the equation is of 4th degree, you will have to open it a bit. And then when you'll simplify, you will find it that the coefficient of x cube in this term is 4. So a3 from here and 4 from here, from the original equation. So this is the first part. Similarly, we will do this for g of x plus 2. How we can do that is we will just replace x by x plus 2 in this g of x. Again, this looks like we will have to open it completely, but no, we just need to open these two terms, because these are the only two terms from which you can have the coefficient of x cube. This is x squared, right? There will be no x cube here, no x cube here. So finally, when you do that, this is straightforward. This will be b3, and when you expand it, you will get 8. So finally, what you require is coefficient of x cube in h of x is equal to a3 plus 4 minus b3 plus 8. Now this is the entire game from now. How to calculate this and the coefficient. Now this is the interesting part. As I said, this question does not require any extensive knowledge of any big topic like complex numbers, or let's say uh, what is that, differentiation, integration, nothing of that sort. This just requires knowledge of theory of equations, and that to one point. And I think by this point most of the classes will have covered this chapter, because this is one of those chapters that is the basic, and every classes covers it in their first 1 or 2 months. Okay, so if you are aiming for JEE 2028, you have already studied everything relevant to this question, and you must score +4 from this. Okay, now the beauty of this question is f of x is not equal to g of x for every x belongs to R. This means, now if you know, if you have, let's say if you have any two graphs, let's say some random graph, we say that, let's say this is um let's say this is e of x. Okay, and let's say this is g of x. What does it mean for this two, e of x and g of x, to have a solution is that they should intersect at a point, right? The point of intersection will be the solution of these two graphs for E of x is equal to G of x. However, if there is to be no solution, right? This is the case. There should be no solution. So this means they do not intersect, which means imaginary roots. Again, you do not require complex numbers for this. This is just from plain theory of equations. Even with real coefficients, you can do this. F of x is not equal to G of x. This means f of x minus G of x is equal to 0 has no real solutions. Again, we can easily find this by subtracting these two. We already have these two. So f of x minus G of x is equal to x cube into this. Just subtract these two. Now, this is the beauty. As we said, all coefficients are real. That was what we gained from here, right? A1, A2, A3, B1, B2, B3, they are all real. Now, if you know about theory of equations, you know that imaginary roots will always occur in conjugate pairs. Now, what do conjugate pairs means? A plus IB, A minus IB. These are conjugate pairs, right? Let me change the color. A plus IB, A minus IB. These are conjugate pairs. Now, if all the coefficients have to be real, this means that this part of the conjugate pair must get cancelled, right? This is why we say that if the coefficients are real, the roots, if imaginary, will always occur in conjugate pairs. Now, for any n degree polynomial for where n is odd, this cannot be, there has to be at least one real root because imaginary roots occur in pair. That is why the real root must occur alone and it must be there in any n degree polynomial, whether it be n is equal to 1, 3, 5, anything. But we have this equation, and for this to have no real solution for all x belongs to R, this has to be 0. We don't care about these two. These can be 0, this cannot be 0, but this has to be 0. Otherwise, it will have at least one real solution. And in the question, we need to have no real solution for this. So simply, coefficient of x cube has to be 0. And what is the coefficient of x cube here? A3 minus B3. So A3 minus B3 has to be 0. And remember, the thing we need to calculate is A3 plus 4 minus B3 plus 8. A3 minus B3 is 0. So what we have left? 4 minus 8 minus 4. And this is our answer. So this is just a question to test your, I don't know, pressure handling capacities or whatever, because I understand that you might be thinking, just put yourselves in the shoes of a candidate. You have learned so much. There's physics, there's chemistry, there's maths. There are so many complex things to, so many complex chapters, right? And your first instinct will be to think of all those complex things. And this question looks like a 4th degree question. So you might think of differentiation. Maybe there's some differentiation required, because generally when we have higher powers, we either think in terms of binomial or differential equations. But this question requires none of that. This question can be solved even by someone who has just read theory of equations, and this chapter is like the very first chapter people read, or first or second chapter. But if I would have to solve this question in, let's say, when I'm at home and I'm preparing, so I will know that this question will probably be given in theory of equations, right? So my mind will be there. So this will be, let's say, a 6 on 10 question. But given the pressure of JEE and how strategically this question has been written, and where this might have been introduced, this is easily a 8 or a 9 type question in terms of difficulty, I feel. But if you are cool enough, it will give you, I don't know, 4 marks very easily in very less number of steps. So this is the entire point of this channel, to simplify JEE and to make you realize not only what the theory is, but the application part, because theory is something your any coaching institute can cover pretty easily, right? It is the application, the thinking process that you have to learn. So please subscribe to this channel, and this is the first question, and deliberately I have chosen a question that does not require much knowledge of JEE. This is something that is you will gain by the first or second chapter. Slowly we will increase, or we will go on to chapters that will require specific knowledge of maths like integration, sequence and series and so on. So please subscribe to this channel. Thank you.